1975, I got a little phone message from a guitar player in Burbank, California, who was forming a rock and roll band, and he was auditioning lead singers. I met him at his mom's house about a week later. He plugs the guitar into a little Fender practice amp, and I tell you what, he plays some of the best guitar I've ever heard to this day. People, don't ever forget the name of this guy. He was Randy Rhoads.
In the late 1970s, Randy Rhoads and his band Quiet Riot were tearing up the music scene in Los Angeles. Then, in 1979, at 23 years old, Rhoads etched his place in history as a guitar legend when he joined Ozzy Osbourne's new solo band. It was an extraordinary rise to fame on a road that was paved with hard work, determination, and sorrow. Randy was an LA kid, born in Santa Monica, California on December 6, 1956, and raised in Burbank. His parents were musicians and music teachers. His father left the family when Randy was just 17 months old, and his mother, Dolores, raised him and his older brother and sister. To support the family, she opened a music school in North Hollywood called Musonia.
He grew up in my school, my music school, and he was very influenced that way.
We were steeped and immersed in all the music and all of the activities that were going on. Randy started playing guitar when he was 6. I started playing drums when I was 12.
I don't think I knew what I was playing when I was 7. I just played the guitar. I mean, it was just anything, you know. It was an unknown Spanish guitar. And I just started playing anything like Gloria or Willy or whatever was out on the radio.
Randy took folk guitar lessons at Musonia, where he learned basic chords and simple pop tunes.
He wanted more than that, so he came and said, Mom, I really want to take electric guitar.
Randy was taking 2 to 3 lessons a week at Musonia. His teachers saw that he was no ordinary student.
This is where Scott Shelley taught Randy for 9 months until Scott went to my mom and said, Mrs. Rhoads, I can't teach your son any longer. My mom said, why would that be? And Scott's reply was, for the last month and a half, he's been teaching me, and I can no longer keep up with him.
My mom pushed me all the time. She knew that I could do it. She thought I would go somewhere. And she gave me the job and the opportunities, helped me with equipment.
In junior high, Randy formed a band with schoolmate and neighbor friend Kelly Garney. He taught Kelly how to play bass, and the two would have regular jam sessions.
And I can remember telling him, there's this concert we got to go to. I'm going to take you to see Alice Cooper. And he thought that was a folk singer. So he goes, well, why do we have to go see her? I said, when you see her, you're going to see why you had to see her. Total epiphany. Changed his life.
Pump 92.3 of the Rock of Las Vegas. We're talking to Kelly Garney here, who grew up with Randy and was one of the founding members of Quiet Riot, which was Randy's basically first real band.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, first real band of any renown. Everything we had done prior to that was just little backyard parties and things like that.
Where I came from, the big thing was to play parties. I mean, there was a lot of bands where I lived, and they'd all play parties.
We often performed with no singer whatsoever. We'd show up, me and Randy and whatever drummer we could get that night, and just jam, and people loved it.
I loved it. I couldn't wait till the weekend so I could play. We used to color them, gear up and everything.
One of Randy's most stunning features was his charisma. Way before he had even developed any big talent as a lead guitar player. But I mean, you just looked at this kid and said, someday he's really going to be something. He's really going to be somebody. And you could just tell he glowed.
Since they were getting more gigs, Randy and Kelly thought it was time they got a singer. In March of 1975, Randy reached out to Kevin DuBrow. DuBrow had been jamming with some friends but had no live experience. Known for his flamboyant clothes, it was clear he always wanted to be center stage. The only piece missing was a drummer.
After my first year in college in the summer of 1975, I was looking for something to do and just on a whim called Randy to see, what he was up to. Maybe we'd get together, jam, do something, whatever. And he and Kelly and Kevin were in the process of looking for a drummer. So that's when I called him. It was just pure dumb luck.
Kevin DuBrow and I were dating at the time, and he told me that he had tried out for this new band to be the singer. And so he had been rehearsing with them, quite a few weeks and everything, and then finally he said, would you like to come down and watch us rehearse? So I went down and I walked in, and they were more hippie-like. They had long hair and kind of grungy clothes and very plain, like very simple. I was expecting something more like a British-style band, because that's what Kevin really loved. They started rehearsing, and it sounded really amazing. It was really fun.
Kevin loved Randy. He had feelings for him as a younger brother. He had respect for his talent. They were very, very close. Actually, the sun rose and set on Randy as far as Kevin was concerned.
When I first heard the guy play, I knew how good he was that moment. It was like, whoa, where did this guy come from? It's like some secret, like a treasure. He wasn't really classically trained. He was a regular rock guitar player, started up playing blues, listened to things like Johnny Winter, Leslie West, Alice Cooper. And then as time went along, he started listening to more classical music and started taking a few classical lessons. But to say he was classically trained, which means somebody who started off playing classical guitar, and Randy did not. He was a rock guitar player.
When I saw him play, I just couldn't believe it either. He was like, he was this little skinny kid, and he was fucking great.
Ron Sobel was a friend of Kevin DuBrow's, and they both shared an interest in photography.
We both were photographers, or I was just starting to be as far as taking rock pictures. He says, well, bring your pictures over, I'll show you mine. And from then on, we became best friends.
Ron went on to become the band photographer for Quiet Riot, capturing many pictures from their early days. And he, too, was blown away by Randy's abilities on the guitar.
He could play fast. He could play slow. Oh, he could play crunchy. He could play bluesy. And all of it was so much feeling. It was just amazing. I just loved it. And he looked good. You could just tell this guy was going to become a rock star.
Randy kind of had an aura about him back then even. We'd go up and we played Stow Park just on a whim, like on a Friday, and 3,000 people would show up. It was always kind of like that.
The group decided they needed a manager, and through a friend, Kevin found Dennis Wagman. Wagman converted his garage into a rehearsal space, and now the band had a place to jam whenever they wanted.
And of course we weren't quite right then either. We throwing out all sorts of ridiculous names at that time.
Okay, I gotta know, what was the name, the previous name? Come on,
Ace Jackson of Bleachers? Top of the dung heap. It was Little Women.
Really? Are you kidding?
Serious.
Oh, no. No wonder you changed it.
That was for about a week. There's a friend of mine who's a group called Status Quo, English band. His Richie Parfit, he's a rhythm guitar player, and I told him the name of the band, of what we used to be called, and he said, if I had a band, I'd call them Quite Right. And Quite Right, and I said, hey, it's Quite Right. He said, say it in English. He goes, Quiet Riot. And so I took it to the guys at rehearsal that night, and they said, cool.
Funny how those things happen in life, because there was no, okay, we're a band now. that didn't happen. I remember playing San Suchi restaurant. We got there, and it was this like Chinese restaurant. And, there were patrons eating, and, Randy turns on his guitar, and it was like, you can't play here. One of the first places I remember us playing was a place in Van Nuys on Oxnard called the Rock Corporation. And it was like a biker's bar. And the patrons there were like bikers, and it went bad sometimes. There was one time where we were playing, as always, too loud. Randy was always louder than God. And it was too loud for the club, and so the management turned off the PA, and so Kevin plugged his microphone into Randy's amp and called him an asshole or something like that. And one of his biker buddies ran from the back of the bar with a pitcher in his hand. And just by real quick thinking on behalf of one of our roadies, Harold jumped in front of Kevin, and the guy beamed Harold right on the head with it. I probably would have killed Kevin with it. I mean, didn't faze Harold. He was a big, heavy guy with very, very thick cranium.
They played a place called La Cañada Country Club, and I did take pictures of the band playing in front of an audience.
Dennis gave us some money to do a demo at Sound City. It was really kind of a beat up place, had kind of a history to it, but it was kind of one of those lower end studios.
Randy was obsessed with finding the right tone and the right guitar.
But you're really playing hard. And on lead, I think if you felt that way, it'd come across. Yeah, if I had the right tone. You'll get it. I got it. Ronnie, taking movies with us. Randy, look, say hi. Hi, Ron. We had a bad moment here, but I'm all together now. We'll be just finishing up here, and then we'll have some pictures after.
For an early birthday present, Dennis bought Randy a Les Paul. Even though it was a gift, Randy insisted on paying him back.
Best thing he ever did, he gave Randy that Gibson.
The demo didn't get them booked anywhere, so the band decided they were going to put on their own show on Halloween. They booked a gig at the Machinist Hall in Burbank.
I remember playing one of those kind of dances, also not going well. It happened a lot in the early days, it seemed like.
The police had to come and break up fights. Kids were trying to get in free, so it was quite a ruckus.
It's around this time Randy got the nickname Snoopy.
If you looked at his profile, The way his nose was and his mouth, and if he kind of went like that, it's just kind of a snoopy look. And he liked that nickname. I mean, he embraced it.
I remember playing the Chili Festival.
The group is called the Quiet Riot.
Well, it was actually quite a large crowd. There was like 25,000 people there.
The band got its first taste of playing in front of a huge crowd. In November of 1975, Quiet Riot played a show on Club Day at Valley College. And while the student body got into Randy's face-melting leads, not everyone was pleased.
They were really loud. And the guy in charge of booking him for Club Day took a lot of heat from the faculty and the administration.
When you hold me, I feel inside. You're giving, I'm taking. I know just how you want it. Here goes just how you need it. I know just how to give it. I know, I know, I know, I know, I know.
The band was on a roll, gigging all over town, but one thing was missing, playing the Hollywood club scene. But as fate would have it, they got a New Year's Eve gig at a club called The Speakeasy after a last-minute cancellation by the Runaways.
Well, yeah, there's a great big local club scene in LA. It's a lot of opportunities for original bands to play.
There are a few specific gigs I can remember that were really integral into getting us somewhere. That show was huge for us. Once we started to get some notoriety, that was probably the most fun time. At first we were best buddies. We did everything together, socializing, partying. You know, we were together a lot. We were together 2, 3, 4 days a week, all the time. So yeah, it was easy at first. And everybody was happy.
The Starwood Quiet Riot played frequently. Every 6 weeks they'd play Thursday, Friday, and Saturday nights, and they do 2 sets, and they pack the house. So it was an amazing place to go see them.
The first time I saw Quiet Riot, I was 15 years old. And I had never been to a rock club before, so Quiet Riot came out. It was this huge sound, and the sound was coming straight from the guitar player. I think my ears rang for 2 days after I went there. So back at high school, I was telling all the kids about Quiet Riot and Randy. Anybody that would get in the car with me, I'd take them down there to the Starwood. We'd line up in front of both the gates. Any door that opened first, we'd fly in there because I had to have my position in front of Randy, in front of the stage. That was where I stood, always.
I had just arrived in Los Angeles in the late 70s, and I went to see whoever was playing at the Starwood, and it just happened to be Quiet Riot. I was just exploring. And they were different from anybody else I had seen in a club because they were already projecting an arena band image. Everything that they were doing was bigger than life. Even though they had minimal production, still they had big production values. When I saw the band performing that night, I actually got to speak with Kevin after the show, and I gave him kudos on how great their vision and the band was. And I told him, hey, you know, you guys are gonna be really big.
We played places like the Starwood and Whiskey all the time. And if you played those kind of places, you were on their like good list, you could go there any night of the week, like Starwood for instance, and they would let you in free. You could go see any show. They had an area upstairs that was just for VIP lounge. And they'd give you free drinks And it was just like being a huge celebrity. I mean, we're like 20 years old, so it was fun. It was a grand old time.
The Starwood was a great place, and Quiet Riot had such a solid following. But the kind of guys that, you know, Randy and Kevin and Kelly and Drew were. I mean, these guys wanted to be rock stars, but they're also really nice guys. That came off to the people that followed them. It was one big family reunion every time they played. A lot of high energy and a lot of fun. People having a great time.
The band that everybody was talking about was Quiet Riot, and the main reason everybody was talking about it was because of Randy. I mean, Randy you'd be hard-pressed to find. As a matter of fact, you couldn't find anyone that hadn't heard Randy that just spoke volumes of his talent. It was just ridiculous. The minute he walked onto that stage, it was the most fantastic vision you can imagine, because he looked like a rock star. And the band hadn't been discovered. I mean, the band, they were still slugging down in the clubs. He played every single note, every single night, like they were headlining the biggest festival on the planet.
Despite their popularity in the Hollywood club scene, the band still couldn't land a record deal. Frustrated with manager Dennis Wagman, they fired him and looked for a new manager.
For a while, Kevin shoved me out front and said, "We don't have a manager, so you act like our manager, because big bands have a manager," you know, and I played that role for a little while. But at the time, I was taking bass lessons from a guy named Adrian Ball, and he introduced me to his cousin named Susan, and Susan had gotten a job working for Warren Ettner. And I told her about Quiet Riot, so I said, "Why don't you have Warren and David go see these guys? I think it might be a band that they can sign." And she did. Susan and Warren went and saw them at the Starwood, and that started their relationship. When they first signed that contract, the feeling with the band and with friends was that, okay, this is it, this is the start. Warren Ettner was working with Angel. Angel was on Casablanca with Kiss. Quiet Riot was waiting in the wings to be the next big thing. Everything was just going to go great.
He was a really personable guy, and he was in the grassroots, so he had some background in music. And they had a pretty good management company going at the time. They had some pull. I got to say, Toby, they were a legitimate management company. So when we did showcases, it wasn't like a cattle call. There were specific showcases for specific labels. That was really efficient. That was the way to do it. And so when Neil Bogart came, you know, he came by himself, and we played just to Neil. Neil Bogart was the head of Casablanca Records at the time. It was really tense. We played like maybe 3 songs. He walked out, that was it. Next day, you know, Warren calls and says, "Yeah, he's going to sign you." Didn't happen. And so then we had to go back and start doing showcases again. So we did one with Buddha. One guy came. He said, "Yeah, I get it. I'll sign these guys."
The album that you have out now, a lot of people have had trouble finding it because it is on CBS Japan. How did it happen that an album like this gets released on a Japanese label? Did you record it in Japan?
We were originally on an American label, and we made this for America. And being as we couldn't do anything with it because we lost the deal, so our manager managed to salvage it and sell it to Japan.
We were doing the album for Buddha. They went bankrupt. So Toby paid for it themselves. Derek Lawrence produced that album. But he had no interest in the band. He just cared about the money. I do a drum track that, it was a really bad drum track. Instead of saying, "Let's do it again," he said, "Oh yeah, we'll fix it and mix." And you know, now I look back and I don't want to hear that stuff anymore. It was just miserable for me. Quiet Riot 1 did not showcase anybody in that band well, which is a real shame. The band generated a lot of interest in Japan by virtue of its look. The Japanese bought that album before they heard it. They bought it on the strength of a picture. which gives you some idea of the strength of a picture.
Kevin and I were very, very close, and I think we had a really good relationship too, except that things with the band and him getting older and a lot of attention, he didn't know how to have that and a girlfriend. So that's pretty much what ended our relationship.
Kevin wasn't the type to stay faithful to a girl, so it's kind of cool that he stayed friends with Jody, and then Jody and Randy started to have an attraction.
Randy came to me and said, you know, I'd really like to spend some time alone with Jody. He was so confident in so many things. He was like a little kid with this. He just really wanted to be alone.
Randy called and he asked if he could come out and get his hair cut. Something just really felt different, and we just clicked and we talked for hours and hours, and at the end of the evening, he asked me if I wanted to go to Disneyland. And so I said, sure, and that was our first date. From that Saturday on, we never parted. There was a lot of tension with Kevin, although he would never admit that. But I do think his ego was hurt.
My dear friend Lori Holland and my girlfriend Carolyn Freeman, they both came home as if they had seen the second coming of Christ after having an amazing time watching some band called Quiet Riot. They go, Brian, you have to see this band. This band is called Quiet Riot, and they have this guitar player named Randy Rhoads, and he's like nothing you've ever seen before. When I saw Quiet Riot, the songs, the music was fantastic. They just got that whole club shaken, like I'd never seen anybody be able to do before. And I completely understood what Carolyn and Lori were on about that night. And I then, at that moment, was hooked on Quiet Riot and wanting to see Randy Rhoads play again, because for me, it was all about Randy. I tell Lori, I said, you know, talk to Kevin. I will work for free, and I will be a band roadie for these guys because they're amazing. Next thing you know, I was doing gigs with Quiet Riot and tuning his guitars and changing his strings.
Laughing Gas would probably be the song that I enjoyed playing because it had more of an edge to it. It was much more metal. And of course, it had Randy's solo in it as well.
I think every guitar player that was worth his salt had his solo time. And Randy's personality came through. Randy was mischievous, you know, he was fun. That came through in his solo, you know, and I think the people loved him for that.
Every night, Kevin would basically introduce Randy Rhoads going into this guitar solo.
I've heard some guitar players, well, but I ain't heard not too many like the incredible Randy Rhoads. And he's gonna bring you a little song. It's called Laughing Gas.
Most guitar solos or drum solos are pretty fucking boring, to be honest. You know, if you go see somebody play a drum solo for 10 minutes, after, 3 minutes, you're pretty much done. Randy did this guitar solo that was mesmerizing. He would crank up the volume and kick on his distortion pedal. and he would play frets up on the neck. Bend the neck, and he'd get the sound of bending the neck on the guitar. And I'd be back there behind his amp, and he had an Echoplex, an old Echoplex with a tape in it, and it had the settings from 0 to like 36 or 24 on it. And during each part of the guitar solo, I was back there, and he would give me, my little numbers. During this, it'd be at 12, and during this part, during D, it would be at 36, and at this one, 24. And I would be back there changing the Echoplex during his guitar solo. The use of volume, he would roll his hands on his volume knobs. And then he would go into this beautiful classical portion. You could hear a pin drop in the Starwood when he was playing this. All eyes and ears were glued to Randy during that guitar solo, especially during the quiet moments. Everybody was riveted to Randy and his guitar, and he made it sing like I'd never seen anybody make it sing before.
I could just sit there and watch him from my vantage point on the stage, look to my left, and there's Randy Rhoads. Even before he was a huge star, I viewed him as a huge star and said, I'm playing with one of the best guitar players there is. Whether anyone knows it or not is irrelevant to me.
Randy knew how good he was, but that didn't matter that much to him. He wanted to be the absolute best guitar player that he could ever be. He wanted to be the greatest guitar player in the world, but he didn't think that made him a better person, or he wasn't arrogant about it at all. And I know that he disliked arrogance from other guitar players.
See, I get asked all the time, who's your favorite, who's your influences? If you play so long, they're bound to change. Whoever's good, you listen to for a while. But I can say that one of my favorite sounds was when I first heard Mountains and Leslie West with that harmonics and the sustain. I just thought it was the greatest thing. But since then, I just like anybody who plays guitar, I don't have a favorite.
This was the years of Guitar Heroes. And I think to a large degree, bands were judged on their guitar player. And I think all the guitar players in town kept up on each other.
I know that at some of the shows we would see David Lee Roth and Eddie Van Halen there, which was always interesting to me because I know Randy never went to see them play, but they would always come to see Quiet Riot and Randy play.
There was a little crosstown rivalry there between Quiet Riot and Van Halen. So Van Halen, they were playing the Whiskey and Gazzarri's and all those same places, and everybody's comparing Eddie Van Halen to Randy Rhoads.
Did you know Randy Rhoads?
Yeah.
What'd you think of that kid?
He was one guitarist who was honest anyway. Because I read some interviews that he did. He said that everything he did, he learned from me.
Uh-huh.
And he was good. But I don't really think he did anything that I haven't done. Sure, there ain't nothing wrong with it, man. I've copied other people's work,
I would take a picture of Eddie Van Halen and just to kind of piss off Randy, and I would put it on his wah-wah pedal, which he wasn't very excited about, but it was in the perfect place because every time he stomped on his wah-wah pedal, he stomped on it as if he wanted to crush it.
Between gigs, Randy gave guitar lessons at Musonia. At one point, he had upwards of 50 students.
No, I'll tell you something. I learned more than I ever have learned by teaching. Because, they'd come up with progressions and say, well, what kind of lead can I do here? And I'd have to keep reverting to scale. And sometimes they'd come up with questions I couldn't answer. Therefore, I'd learn licks every day.
Some of those licks the students wanted to learn were from his crosstown rival, Eddie Van Halen.
But talking about Randy being a teacher, if you look at any of his live photos, it always looks like he's giving a lesson to everybody in the arena. He was never one of those guitar players that would hide what he was playing. He always was very articulate, very clear in his presentation to the audience.
I had started to listen to Van Halen, and so I said, well, I really kind of like this. And I would bring a cassette and I'd play it for him. I didn't realize at the time that there was this relationship between the two of them. Had I have known about that, I probably wouldn't have asked. But Randy graciously offered to learn the song, and I'm sure it killed him to have to take that cassette home and learn how to play the songs of his nemesis.
Honestly, I never felt any rivalry with Van Halen. But then again, from my perspective, I think it was more because it was the Guitar Hero thing. And since I'm a drummer, it maybe just didn't occur to me. But we did play with him that one time at Glendale College.
There was a concert that almost didn't happen because Quiet Riot and Van Halen couldn't decide who was going to be the headliner and who was going to be the warm-up act. I mean, it literally came down to a short time before the concert ever happened. And then Van Halen signed a record contract, and then it was like, okay, you're the headliner.
It was a big show, over 1,000. A lot of people there. That was a big venue for us back then. Randy had the flu that night, and I know he really wanted to be at his best that night because he felt, I think, a bit of a rivalry because people likened him to Eddie. So I think he wanted to show that he was as good, but I don't think his ego was involved. And what I remember was he stepped off the back of the stage and fell down and hurt himself just because his head wasn't in it, He was really feeling lousy. And, Randy was a real card. He would always do something to get you in trouble almost every time you interacted with him. So he was like, oh, there's these dresses. Oh, let's put them on. When I look at Ron's pictures now, it's hard for me to believe it's the same person almost.
Here's our manager, Warren Andrew. He got us all together just like this.
On the surface, it looked like the band was having a good time, but underneath, frustrations were boiling over, especially when Van Halen got signed to a record deal and Quiet Riot didn't.
Kevin, he was a real strong personality, and he and Kelly never really got along from the get-go. Part of that was due to Kelly's, problems. He was suffering from a real bad alcohol addiction problem, and it was getting the better of him. It came to a head.
You give advice for free.
To me, it's the most tragic night of Kelly Garney's life. If there's one night in Kelly Garney's life that he could have back, I'm sure that's it. There had always been a tension in the band between Kevin and Kelly, but it never became a crisis because Kelly always carried his end of playing on stage. Kevin would have replaced him, if he could have, but, he wasn't going to fight Randy over it. Kelly just wanted to be in a bar band. He was just having a good time, and he wanted to keep having a good time. I'm not sure that Kelly thought he was good enough to be in the band. Kevin was always telling him he wasn't. So there was a whole lot of frustration going on, and Kelly was drinking more and more and more. I mean, we all were. The difference was Randy and I could go out and get hammered one night, but Randy always practiced his parts, always made it to the rehearsal studio on time. He always did what he needed to do. Kelly, on the other hand, didn't. They'd been listening tapes of the recording, and Kevin was very critical of Kelly's playing, was critical especially of some of the background vocals, and basically had told Randy that Kelly wasn't taking it seriously enough. And for the first time, Randy was kind of, you might be right. But I think Randy really believed that he could go there and talk to Kelly and Kelly would change.
One night, Randy wanted to confront him, so he went over and took Kim with him to confront Kelly about all the problems they were having and tell him if he didn't shape up, they were going to have to get somebody else to replace him.
Randy and I went over there, and by the time we got there, Kelly was already pretty hammered, and Randy was not comfortable wanting to confront Kelly about what was going to happen. So there was some real tension in the room right away. As the evening progressed, it became more and more confrontational. Randy was pushing Kelly, you need to not drink, you need to learn your parts, you need to do what's necessary, you need to cooperate, you need to work hard. It just got more and more aggressive, and finally Kelly just said, I want to show you how much I don't care. And he pulled a gun out from the sofa. And Randy's like, what the hell are you doing? He aimed the gun and started firing it off. That really pissed Randy off. And Randy just took a run at Kelly at that point, just basically tackled him, and it was just total chaos. In retrospect, it was a very tragic night, and I know both of them felt equally bad about it later. I think Randy walked in there with dreams that his boyhood band could make it as is, and he walked out going, okay, it's time to move forward. Now I have to make decisions for me. I have to do the right thing for my band. It was a line that was drawn, okay, where Randy moved from being in a garage band to being in a professional band.
With Kelly out of the band, they needed to find a new bass player. One of their first auditions was with Nikki Sixx.
And Nikki, at the time, this is quite some time ago, he couldn't even tune the bass. Randy had to show him how to tune the bass, and he was trying to show him songs, but Nikki had no formal training, so he didn't know, Randy would say this is in C or this is in E or whatever. Nikki didn't know what that meant.
Remember the Nikki audition for Quiet Riot when Kelly left in '77?
Oh, you're kidding?
No. We predated these bands by at least 4 or 5 years. Long years, let me tell you.
Was Nikki any good at that time, or?
At all.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so Randy couldn't sit there and teach him how to play bass. And I really liked him as a person, but he just didn't know how to play the instrument. That's just not an insult, that's just a fact. I mean, in 1977, he did not know the instrument. Nikki stumbled onto a real good thing with Motley Crue.
So we realized this isn't going to work because You know, Randy was, he was a real virtuoso, and he just couldn't be playing with some guy who didn't even know, you know, what key things were in. So we auditioned a few guys, one of which was Ronnie Barron, and the look didn't quite work. It's hard to find somebody who weighs less than 100 pounds to stand next to Randy on stage. Rudy had the look. He was a, you know, solid player, and he matched real well on the pictures.
How did you find Rudy? He found us, and we had our bass player. He said, hey, that's the band I want to be in if you guys ever need a bass player. I always remember him because he was perfect.
Unfortunately, Quiet Riot never operated like a band should. It was one of the problems I had with it from day one. And part of it was because Randy and Kelly were so close together. They grew up playing together all the time. Randy taught Kelly how to play bass. You know, bands, the way they're supposed to work, the drummer creates the time, and then everybody plays with that time. But it didn't work that way ever in Quiet Riot. Kelly played with Randy. Randy played with Kelly, and I was just back there. Nobody ever listened to me.
True Forsyth on drums.
So Rudy brought a different thing to the band. He immediately was better. He was a better musician than Kelly by far. The band became more professional.
Actually, Kill a Girl, it's the song that I had to learn for my audition, and I took it for granted that since the riff sounded like a typical E in the key of E riff, that's how the song went. Because it's doing that, right? Open string. But no, it happened to be an F song. When I went into audition, started playing the song, of course, it was total cacophony because I was playing it in the wrong key, and anyways, I just had to transpose everything really quickly. But it felt really comfortable, really good to be playing with really polished musicians. Killer Girls, very, very unique song. And it's a very well-crafted song. It has a lot of not only key changes, but tempo changes. You know, very, very sophisticated, you know, for a bunch of kids from the valley. But you know, Quiet Riot liked to do things a little bit outside of the box. We were not really a cover band, and that was very refreshing because that's exactly what I was looking for, an original band.
We wrote this music to bring you a special bulletin. We've just received information about the riot that has broken out downtown.
The house lights would go out in the Starwood, and there were police lights. We had these red police lights.
A young singer, Kevin Monroe.
The sirens would go.
Rudy Forsyth. Bassist, Rudy Sarzo.
The place would be going nuts.
Guitarist, Randy Rhoads.
You know, kind of creating some kind of a riot or a chaos right before the band started to play.
Bassist, Rudy Sarzo. And his volume is believed to cause the disturbance. Guitarist, Randy Rhoads. Collectively, they are known as Quiet Riot. They now take over the scene.
Hey, there's nothing like a little sweat before you go on. This is the part that Quiet Riot gets to be nervous. You know, the sound effect intro, the mentioning our names before we go up, cameras, lights, action. Down here. And then rock. Happy birthday. Thank you.
You know, we were doing great, but we weren't doing well as a business. The Toby organization sent out demos all the time, and they had a relationship with Atlantic. And the guy at Atlantic, you know, every couple of weeks they'd send him something, and we would get a letter back each time. And, you know, would say pass, we're gonna pass on these guys. But after like the 10th time he got a letter, they sent a letter back that said pass, in case you don't understand what this means, pass. And Atlantic was out of the question for us. That was never gonna happen.
We believed we had a great band that was going to go out there and really do something, and suddenly it was stuck, you know, and it went from the greatest of optimism to what's happening next, where are we going to go, what's going to happen to the band.
In 1979, Warren Entner was out as their manager and was replaced by David Forrest. The pressure was building as to whether Quiet Riot could finally get a record deal.
I also happen to manage this band, Quiet Riot, which happens to be kind of a weird phenomenon because they don't have a record deal and yet they're drawing huge crowds. They don't have a record deal yet, and if they don't, in the next 6 months, I doubt that they'll stick together.
Punk and new wave exploded on the music scene, and bands like X and the Go-Go's were getting more popular.
Those bands were now being signed, and we still weren't getting any toehold with the record labels.
The record company were very short-sighted. They were just focusing on whatever happened to be selling records at that time in that certain spot, which happened to be new wave music. After the Knack became very big, they really shut the door on any of the other rock bands up and coming. And we were going into a record company and say, listen, we got this demo here. And the guy would say, well, let's pull out Billboard magazine and say, okay, if you guys come up with a song like Do You Think I'm Sexy by Rod Stewart, I would love to check it out. So yeah, we would go out, rehearse, record some songs, go to a record plant, spend money and time, go back to that guy, and by then, Do You Think I'm Sexy is off the charts. It was like, nah, that song is dated. Come up with this other song. It was like we were basically chasing our tails.
You're not working for the record company. The record company's working for you. They contract you to make a record for them, and you basically sort of employ them to release the record. But when they're holding the money, what are you supposed to do? You can't go down there with a gun, although God knows we've all wanted to.
For the most of this last week, we have been recording some stuff here in our never-ending attempt to make these American record labels give us a deal. And when I say never-ending, you can count on the fact that I mean never-ending, all right?
Once in a million, baby, you're lucky charm.
There was some push for us, especially from management, to do some things like One in a Million is a perfect example. It's a disco song. Why are we doing this? I don't know. We're going to try anything to get us signed. So we're trying a lot of things that, in retrospect, weren't a great idea. You have to do what you do best and not worry about anything else. That's what you need to do. And we never did that. There were too many times where we made exceptions. One in a Million is a perfect example of that.
We could have given them Sgt. Pepper and it didn't matter. We were not a new wave band. So out of desperation, I say, hey, how about if we take our fan club and have them pick it at every single record company? I just said that, probably the most ridiculous thing I could come up with, just as a joke. And Kevin said, wait a minute, this sounds like a great idea. And I went, whoops.
Fan club president Lori Holland wasted no time getting the word out.
She was able to recruit fans all the time. So our fan club just kept growing and growing and growing. And in the days that, before Facebook or MySpace or anything like that, she did an incredible job.
Everybody went to Ron and Kevin's house and we printed t-shirts. They were hanging on the beds and the dressers and all over the place. We screened all these t-shirts at Quiet Riot so that all the fans could have a t-shirt on while we picketed the record companies. We made big signs and banners and got all the kids organized at this park in Burbank. And they went from record company to record company to record company, trying to get that band signed.
The idea was to make as much noise as we could.
So we went to all the major record companies, Warner Brothers,
carrying on to Capitol Records,
A&M,
Elektra,
CBS and Century City.
Kevin had laid out the whole route and we've got signs saying, sign Quiet Riot, sign Quiet Riot.
Kevin's ultimate idea was to try to get news coverage for this. So he had a little schedule.
Unfortunately, on the first stop in Burbank at Warner Brothers, we didn't have a permit to demonstrate. We were chased out of there. So the schedule was pushed about half an hour ahead. So every time news media was alerted that the demonstration was going to happen, they missed it by half an hour. But eventually, on the very last stop at CBS Records, they actually got to catch the demonstration and actually appear in the news.
We did get the news people there. We did get on several of the news stations, but if we'd had a publicity agent who could have really got the people there, that might have helped us.
Did we get a record deal? No, but we got a hell of a story out of it.
With no deal on the table, the future was uncertain for Quiet Riot. But for Randy Rhoads, things were about to take an unexpected turn. Across town, singer Ozzy Osbourne was holed up in a hotel after being fired as the frontman of Black Sabbath. The band had enough of his out-of-control behavior and sent him packing. Down but not out, Ozzy still wanted to make music, and he came to Los Angeles to find a lead guitarist.
After leaving Black Sabbath, I'd never ever auditioned anyone in my life because Sabbath just formed. We were mates, and so I didn't even know how to go about auditioning.
Randy was familiar with Black Sabbath, but it wasn't his cup of tea.
I wasn't a big Sabbath fan, to be honest. I mean, they were great what they did. Obviously, they did it and made it huge. Gotta respect that.
And he used to tell me, he used to go, I don't like Black Sabbath very much. I know you do, so we're not gonna get into it. But he goes, who the fuck would write his name on his hand? He goes, I don't understand that. Didn't care for Sabbath, thought it was too dark and too sluggish.
When he left Sabbath, he was putting a new band, like his own band together. And he just went around auditioning. And he spent a lot of time in LA auditioning. And the bass player he originally was auditioning with called me and said, why don't you go down and meet him?
Dana Strum. That bass player was Dana Strum, and he had only one person in mind for that audition.
I was calling Randy Rhoads at his mother's music studio in Burbank, Musonia.
And he said, I'm here with a guy that wants to audition you. He wants you to be in his band. This could be really big.
I was kind of worried about auditioning because I'd never been to an audition.
Just come down, but bring the shit that you use at the Starwood. If he doesn't get what I get when I see what I see from that balcony looking down, then I really thought I'm as wrong as could be, and I'm fucked, and whatever. But I have a feeling there's no one that isn't gonna get what I get if you're put in the right circumstance.
And Randy said, well, I teach here till 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. I'm tired, I don't know. And then Dana said, look, all right, trust me, something tells me you need to do this.
Meeting Ozzy was a freaky experience. I went to the hotel, and as I opened the door, I made my way through 50 Heineken bottles. I've got a list. He had a list of guitar players. I'm like, can I see the list? Yeah. Had no way to get there. No plan. Just hands me a list. He says, we're gonna go see these people? I said, well, I know a few of these people. Nope. I said, but I have the guy.
And I met this bloke, this guy introduced me to Randy Rhoads. This guy, you gotta hear this guy play. This guy's amazing.
And when I did come down, he said all these guys had Marshall stacks and Echoplexes and this and that. I brought a little tiny practice amp.
Pulls out this little combo amp. Wait till you hear this. It's huge. He says, let's hear Jesus now. Let's hear the man now. Let's hear the Messiah.
If you've been in a recording studio, they have a glass booth up there. Well, I was through the tune-up amp. No effects, nothing. I mean, just straight through that mic, and they were all listening. They said, okay, play. That's where you got to be jumped. What could I play? No musicians. So I just thought, oh no.
And he starts tuning up and doing arpeggios.
I'm like, go kid, this is it.
And I just started warming up.
I remember Ozzy went from the hair down to almost stammering.
And I said, just play something. And I thought I was dreaming when I heard this guy play. The guy was a little guy with such a big sound.
Just started tuning up and doing some riffs, and he says, "You got the gig." And I was the weirdest feeling. I thought, you didn't even hear me yet.
And it just happened like that. And I flew back to England, and I said to Sharon's father, who was still involved with us then, "You gotta hear this player." And he said, no, we'll find one here. Meanwhile, Sharon came from America, and I said to Sharon, "Please get me this guy." And Sharon went back and got Randy.
I had an 18th birthday party, and Quiet Riot came to my party, and Randy and I were strolling in behind everybody, and he goes, "Hey, Lori, come here, I gotta tell you something." I said, "What?" He said, "Do you know who Ozzy Osbourne is?" And I said, "Is he that guy in Black Sabbath?" And he goes, "Yeah." He said, "I auditioned for him today." I said, "You what?" All I did was plug in my guitar, and all I did was go, and he goes, "You're the guy." And I said, "Well, what does that mean?" And he goes, "Well, I'd have to leave Quiet Riot and go on tour with him. What do you think?" I said, "Well, Randy, I think you should go and make a name for yourself, and you can always come back and get Quiet Riot."
He gave it some great thought and decided to go with them. But I know he was in horrible turmoil inside. He really felt that he was betraying the band, especially Kevin.
He was scared to death of having to walk up to Kevin and say, "I'm leaving the band." You know, he knew it was going to hurt Kevin really bad. And I think that was probably the hardest part of it. But I don't think there's any doubt that it was the right thing to do. I'm sure Kevin was obligated to try to save it. I mean, who wouldn't?
When you're in a band, you kind of feel like you're all part of this machine. And so it felt like a betrayal of a sort. I don't remember exactly how I found out that he was going to play with Ozzy. What I do know is that he didn't call me himself. That was the thing that I was most disappointed in, was that he didn't make the effort to call me and say, after, you know, spending all these years with him, that he wouldn't pick up the phone and say, "Hey, you know, this is what I'm going to do." So I was disappointed in that, in his lack of character. But I certainly understood why. Part of the reason he moved on was because of his writing relationship with Kevin. It was, you know, toxic to him. He could not write what he wanted to write with Kevin.
Guitar players write different. They don't write from singing point of view all the time. They write a lot from what feels natural. And like, I've got a very mean singer. I've learned a lot of things about what he doesn't dig and things like that.
The last gig of Quiet Riot at the Starwood, everybody was walking on eggshells that night because nobody really knew what was happening, but they kind of knew. And it was a very odd night. And at that time, you know, I knew that that was the end of an era for that band and that time.
The night before Randy left to go to England to join Ozzy, we all were at Randy's house reminiscing about old times and what it would be like for him to go.
That night, I remember that we just had fun. You know, we had fun like we used to have fun. There are certain nights that are snapshots for me of Randy. I'm sure that's a night that Randy probably put in his pocket, and whenever he felt homesick, he can think of a night like that.
I think it was in September 1979. I'm sitting in my apartment in West Hollywood getting ready to go to a rehearsal, and I get a call from Randy. Out of nowhere, the phone rings and he goes, "Frankie?" And I go, "Randy?" He goes, "Yeah." And he was like very direct, right to the point. He goes, "You want to go play with Ozzy?" And I said, "Ozzy?" He goes, "Yeah, the Black Sabbath guy." And we drove to a rehearsal studio that I knew was Mars Rehearsal Studio. And I walked in and set up my 1969 green sparkle Ludwig kit, with a 38-inch gong and everything. And then I finally met Mr. Ozzy Osbourne himself. Right away, we started playing. So the first song we started working on was the beginnings of what became Over the Mountain. Randy was pretty much running the rehearsal, in that Ozzy sat there for the most part and just looked and nodded in approval, and everything seemed like it was going to be a go. But as luck would have it, I am told that Jet Records had decided that they were going to record in the UK rather than the US. They were only going to bring one person over, and the choice, hands down, was clear. It had to be Randy. It certainly wasn't going to be me, but I have wonderful recollections of that because I actually got to be in the room with Randy at the very, very beginning of what turned out to be a wonderful musical experience for the world.
When he came to England, he lived with me in my house we lived together for about a year in my house, writing songs.
When I first met Ozzy, there was no band yet. So I was staying at his house, and he and I were just sort of knocking ideas around. And then we met Bob. And the three of us, while we were looking for a drummer, auditioning, we were just sort of messing around with riffs and ideas.
It was Randy's riff for Crazy Train that would not only jumpstart Ozzy's solo career, but it would put Randy on the map as a guitar legend. Crazy Train was the first single off the album Blizzard of Oz, which was released in 1980.
I'll never forget a memory I have, and I'm crossing the street in front of Warner Brothers. There's about 4 cars at the stop sign, and I walked in front of them, and every car was playing Crazy Train. He was in a big band, and he was being played on the radio all the time.
Blizzard of Oz lineup was now complete and featured Ozzy Osbourne on vocals, Bob Daisley on bass, Lee Kerslake on drums, and Randy Rhoads on guitar. A huge commercial success, Blizzard of Oz was certified 4 times platinum in the US, went on to sell over 7 million albums worldwide.
I truly, truly believe that Randy was the one element that made it possible for Ozzy to reach greater heights than he even had with Black Sabbath, which is unheard of.
Randy's influence on a generation of guitarists was felt immediately.
If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be playing the way I do. On top of the great songs were the great riffs. I mean, any Randy song, you could take a riff and you play it and people know.
I remember, being I guess like a 12-year-old kid and like walking up to my local mall and going to the Music Land and buying the Blizzard of Oz cassette and getting home and popping it in and hearing I Don't Know, and it just like blew me away. I was like, this is like the coolest guitar I've ever heard in my life, and it was really like rock and roll perfection.
The playing was just meticulous and unique. I knew they were double, and tripling his solos, which I know how hard that is. These riffs and these songs were really special and gave such an amazing, template for Randy to shine.
Right away, I thought, wow, Ozzy's really done something, because, I'd been a fan of Black Sabbath, and I liked Ozzy, and he left, and I really loved when Black Sabbath got Dio, and that was cool. But we kind of wondered what's Ozzy going to do now?
In September 1980, the Blizzard of Oz tour kicked off in Europe with a North American leg soon to follow.
Is this pretty close to the dream, being with Ozzy and starting out with this magnificent stage?
Well, I think this is beyond it, because I'm really lucky to jump from a local band to a headline this big.
But behind the scenes, tensions were rising. During a management dispute, bassist Bob Daisley and drummer Lee Kerslake were fired before the North American tour started. Back in LA, Quiet Riot was struggling without its lead guitarist.
There was a short period of time there, a couple of months probably, where we weren't certain whether Randy was going to stay with Ozzy and be a permanent thing, because he was kind of leading us on that he would come back. So there was a time of just, foundering. And then after that, we realized he wasn't coming back. Certainly the Ozzy stuff shows more where he wanted to be.
After Randy left Quiet Riot to join Ozzy, he returned to LA and we did a reunion show. I had cut my hair and wanted to turn new wave just because, you know, I had to eat.
I met this kid called Eddie. He called me and said, hey, you know, Randy's playing at the Whiskey. He's gonna be playing with Kevin DuBrow. And I do remember we came back down to the second level of the Whiskey and we watched Randy come out and play. He played a couple songs. I can just remember today that his guitar sound just sticking to my face.
He came back to do that show, and the whole time his demeanor is, oh yeah, we're gonna continue to do this, which I think he had no intention of continuing to do that.
It was great to have Randy back playing with us, but it was also very sad knowing that it was gonna be very short-lived.
First real band was called Quiet Riot. I guess I thought Quiet Riot would make it, but now that I'm away, I knew it would. I hate to say that, but it's kind of like I was growing up at the time, didn't know. But there's a lot more room for guitar in this band than in Quiet Riot.
When Randy left, Kevin was a little bit deluded. I think Kevin really thought in his gut that at some point, Randy was going to come back and play with him in Quiet Riot again. I mean, I really think he believed that. And I don't think there was a chance in hell that was going to happen. Randy had moved on.
To be honest, I want to start getting back to practicing, and when I have time, learning myself, taking lessons. Like in England, I had a lot of time, and I took classical again. And like if I have a month off, I'll go back and take lessons because I want to keep bettering myself.
Classical guitar became Randy's focus. He would spend hours practicing after shows.
He would always be doing his scales. I could hear him in the next room, all day, every day.
Randy would say to me, you know, I don't know if I'm doing the right thing here. He was quite apprehensive about the whole thing because he was studying classical guitar, and actually, I think he felt it was interrupting his studies in a way.
Right.
And I said, no, this is great for you, man. You've got to do this, you know. And so, I think I gave him the right advice.
On Blizzard of Oz, Randy wrote an incredible classical piece dedicated to his mother, Dee. It's a piece that's inspired musicians for decades, and one that is often covered in tribute to the man that never stopped teaching.
One of the things that Randy would always do, if he had support bands and asked him, how do you get that kind of sound? He would teach the other bands things. He would give them lessons on the road, always, all the time. He always had time for musicians, always.
You know, I think another thing that Randy did was he made classical cool. I'm the son of two classical musicians, and, you know, I couldn't wait to get away from learning cello and piano when I was a kid and play rock guitar. And, you know, all of a sudden when I heard Randy and I was introduced to the concept of classical music being quote unquote cool, it really made me reevaluate everything that I'd been through.
Really trying to figure out all of the parts that were in Revelation Mother Earth. If you've never heard Randy's music and this is one of the first songs that you hear, you'll notice a heavy classical influence on that.
That's
and
right.
He's playing acoustic guitar, and all the overdub parts are all these puzzle pieces that make it challenging to figure out what the voicing is for each thing. So you can't necessarily figure out an easy accompaniment. I got into other kinds of classical music because of his playing.
Randy's virtuoso performance on Blizzard of Oz and his eclectic style was making waves in the music industry. In 1981, he was presented with the Best New Talent Award from Guitar Player magazine. It was a proud moment for the kid from Burbank to finally land on the world stage. Less than a year after recording Blizzard of Oz, the group headed back to the studio to begin recording their follow-up album, Diary of a Madman. But unlike Blizzard of Oz, where the band took their time crafting songs, Diary of a Madman was recorded in just over a month.
To be honest, that album to me was a bit rushed. We didn't have as much time to write it. The material came out shiny, but I was a bit lost for lyrics, what to do on it. I sort of had to put the leads together in the studio. But you know, for how I did it, I'm happy.
Despite feeling rushed in the studio, Randy's neoclassical guitar work reached new heights. The complex music showcased his ability to shred, create great riffs, and weave in classical themes.
You know, one of those players that I personally love listening to, and I know a lot of people do, where they're just not trying, they're serving the composition for one, and secondly, not trying to show off. But he was really picking his spots. He was very economical in the way he played and very smart and served the song.
In support of Diary of a Madman, the group was gearing up for their second concert tour. Bob Daisley and Lee Kerslake were replaced with drummer Tommy Aldridge, and on Randy's recommendation, his former Quiet Riot bandmate, Rudy Sarzo, on bass. It was a tour highlighted by some moments only Ozzy was capable of. It was during a show in Des Moines, Iowa, that a fan threw a dead bat on stage. Thinking it was a toy, Ozzy picked it up and bit its head off. Then in San Antonio, Texas, after yet another night of drinking, Ozzy was arrested for relieving himself on the Alamo.
I remember Randy would say to me, Ozzy, why do you drink so much? Why do you take so much dope? Why do you get stoned all the time? He never drank much. He never took drugs at all. He never smoked a joint. He smoked cigarettes, but that's about it. He had the occasional drink, but I was drunk and stoned all the time. And he would say to me, you know, Ozzy, you're gonna die soon.
For Randy, touring was exciting, but he was in uncharted waters as a guitar hero in a heavy metal band.
It's totally strange. It hasn't hit me yet. People say, does it go to your head, make you egotistical? That's a load of shit. What it does is it makes you totally frightened and humble because you don't understand it. Everything just comes at you so fast. Ozzy's such a humble guy, you know. He always says, well, this will happen, and it does. And he sort of educates me, like he says. I mean, he'll tell me about the record companies, about the kids in the audience.
The tour was a huge success. After weeks of playing to sold-out venues, they played what would be Randy's last show at the Knoxville Civic Coliseum on March 18th, 1982. After the gig, they boarded their tour bus and headed to Orlando, Florida to play Rock Super Bowl 14, which featured Foreigner, UFO, and Bryan Adams. On the way to Orlando, bus driver Andy Aycock made a pit stop in Leesburg, Florida to fix a broken air conditioning unit on the bus. They pulled into the estate of country singer Jerry Calhoun, who was the owner of Florida Coach. Aycock lived on the property, which housed an airstrip and several small aircraft. Aycock, who knew how to fly, convinced keyboardist Don Airey and tour manager Jake Duncan to go for a flight. He took the plane without permission and headed on a joyride. After buzzing the bus several times, they landed safely, and now Aycock wanted Randy and makeup artist Rachel Youngblood to go for a ride. Youngblood had a heart condition and was hesitant to go. Although Randy didn't like flying, he agreed to it when Aycock said he would do nothing risky because of Youngblood's condition. Randy also wanted to take some aerial photos to send to his mother. During the flight, Aycock didn't stick to his word. Instead, he buzzed the tour bus several times, flying at over 150 miles per hour, and on his last attempt, everything went wrong. The plane's left wing clipped the top of the bus, sending the aircraft spiraling out of control. The plane hit the top of a pine tree and burst into flames after crashing into the garage of the mansion. Everyone on board was killed instantly.
It's amazing in 1 second how your whole life can turn around, you know. You go to bed on a bus driving down a freeway, and you wake up and you're in the middle of a field and there's a house on fire and there's bits of aeroplane everywhere and people like running around screaming. It's horrendous.
According to police, the three were on an early morning joyride after staying up over 24 hours, while some members of the Ozzy Osbourne band slept in their tour bus parked next to the house. The other three buzzed overhead, circling the bus 3 times. On the 4th time, they didn't make it.
Is this really happening? You don't think it's happening, you don't think it's not happening. You can't understand what's happening. You're just kind of like locked in a time lock, and it's like horrible. And you can't get out. Every time you turn around, there's something worse happening, you know. I mean, it's like being in a battlefield, you know.
And I'm pretty sure I heard about it. I was listening to the radio and they said it. And as soon as I heard it, I called Kevin. And he was crying. He couldn't believe that happened. And of course, everybody wanted to know what happened, why, how. It's just a tragic thing that happened.
Kevin was destroyed when Randy died, when he got the news. I remember going to the funeral. Kevin was one of the pallbearers. It was just awful. He was just so upset and so depressed, and it was a terrible, terrible thing. My heart went out to his mother and his family and to my own son, who was so deeply affected by having lost this friendship.
You know, it was very hard for, personally, to carry on, playing in Ozzy's band after Randy's death. Every time we went on stage, it was, the memories, it was the same stage, production, clothing, even the intro of the show was Randy playing Diary of a Madman. And I don't know, I had become very robotic on stage, and the only way that I could really survive the show was just shut down and just, play.
In 2004, Randy received another honor. He was inducted into Hollywood's Rock Walk of Fame. Fans and fellow musicians joined in to celebrate his life and legacy.
Today, we're here to honor the memory of an extraordinary musician. There's a man that during his brief 25 years on this planet touched millions of people just like you and me with his talent, and he left a musical legacy that will never, ever be forgotten. Randy was just 22 when he joined Ozzy for the Blizzard of Oz album. He wrote many of the songs on that record. And after Blizzard of Oz, of course, Randy went on to write music for the next album, Diary of a Madman. And it's his work on just these 2 albums that have guaranteed Randy Rhoads a lasting place in rock history and his induction today into the Rock Walk. Ozzy Osbourne, folks.
It seems such a long time ago that I played with Randy Rhoads, and yet it seems so like yesterday I knew him. But all I can say about my memory of Randy Rhoads is that I will never forget as long as I live that he was a small guy with such an enormous, giant talent. And he's so sadly missed in my family, and there's not a day goes by without us thinking of him. He'll never die in my heart. He's there forever. God bless Randy Rhoads.
I feel that in my heart, definitely Randy and I were soulmates.
It's funny when you talk about that it factor and the presence that Randy had. He'd be in a room and people would just turn and look, you know? It was amazing, but that wasn't what made him who he was. I mean, part of who he was the fact that it's like his talent, it's like you're aware of it, but it's not the big deal. He was my friend. And at the time, we were just two guys that were having a great time.
Randy had celebrity, is what he had. There are certain people that just have that. From the time I first met him, you know, we would play a party and thousands of people would show up. You know, at the time he was like, 15. It wasn't because he was such a great guitar player at the time, but he had celebrity, he drew people. When somebody is a celebrity, when they have that essence, that light, everybody gravitates to it. They're like moths to the light, and that's what Randy was. When you're watching the band on stage, all the audience gravitated to that side of the stage because that's where the light was. Randy was the light, and everyone gravitated to the light.
And Randy's light continues to shine. In 2021, he was recognized for his contribution to the music world and was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. In a short time, Randy inspired millions across the globe. It's a legacy that continues to this day.
Thank you.